It is one of the main tasks of a real leader to mask the grim reality of dying and killing by evoking in his followers the illusion that they are participating in a grandiose spectacle, a solemn or light-hearted dramatic performance. Hitler dressed 80 million Germans in costumes and made them perform in a grandiose, heroic, and bloody opera. In Russia, where even the building of a latrine involves some self-sacrifice, life has been an uninterrupted, soul-stirring drama going on for 30 years, and its end is not yet. The people of London acted heroically under the hail of bombs because Churchill cast them in the role of heroes. They played their heroic role before a vast audience, ancestors, contemporaries, and posterity, and on a stage lighted by a burning world city and the music of barking guns and screaming bombs. It is doubtful whether in our contemporary world, with its widespread individual differentiation, any measure of general self-sacrifice can be realized without theatrical hocus-pocus and fireworks. It is difficult to see, therefore, how the present Labour government in England can realize its program of socialization, which demands some measure of self-sacrifice from every Briton in the colourless and undramatic setting of socialist Britain. The untheatricality of most British socialist leaders is a mark of uprightness and intellectual integrity, but it handicaps the experiment of nationalization, which is undoubtedly the central purpose of their lives. The indispensability of play-acting in the grim business of dying and killing is particularly evident in the case of armies. Their uniforms, flags, emblems, parades, music, and elaborate etiquettes and ritual are designed to separate the soldier from his flesh and blood self and mask the overwhelming reality of life and death. We speak of the theater of war and the battle scene. In their battle orders, army leaders invariably remind their soldiers that the eyes of the world are on them, that their ancestors are watching them, and that posterity shall hear of them. The great general knows how to conjure an audience out of the sands of the desert and the waves of the ocean. Glory is largely a theatrical concept. There is no striving for glory without a vivid awareness of an audience, the knowledge that our mighty deeds will come to the ears of our contemporaries, or of those who are to be. We are ready to sacrifice our true, transitory self for the imaginary eternal self we are building up by the heroic deeds in the opinion and imagination of others. In the practice of mass movements, make-believe plays perhaps a more enduring role than any other factor. When faith and the power to persuade or coerce are gone, make-believe lingers on. There is no doubt that in staging its processions, parades, rituals, and ceremonials, a mass movement touches a responsive chord in every heart. Even the most sober-minded are carried away by the sight of an impressive mass spectacle. There is an exhilaration in getting out of one's skin in both participation and spectators. It is possible that the frustrated are more responsive to the might and splendor of the mass than the people who are self-sufficient. The desire to escape or camouflage their unsatisfactory self, delving in the frustrated a facility for pretending, for making a show, and also a readiness to identify themselves wholly with an opposing mass spectacle. Deprecation of the present, number 48. At its inception of a mass movement seems to champion the present against the past. It sees in the establishment, institution, and privileges an encroachment of a senile, vile past on a virginal present. But to pry loose the stranglehold of the past, there is need for utmost unity and unlimited self-sacrifice. This means that the people called upon to attack the past in order to liberate the present must be willing to give up enthusiastically any chance of ever tasting or inheriting the present. The absurdity of the proposition is obvious. Hence the inevitable shift in emphasis once the movement starts rolling. The present, the original objective, is shoved off the stage and place taken by posterity, the future. More still, the present is driven back as if it were an unclean thing and lumped with the detested past. The battle line is now drawn between things that are and have been and the things that are not yet. See the Animal Farm. To lose oneself, to lose one's life is but to lose present, and clearly to lose a defiled, worthless present is not to lose much. Not only does a mass movement depict the present as a mean and miserable, it deliberately makes it so. It fashions a pattern of individual existence that is dour, hard, repressive, and dull. It decries pleasure and comforts and extols the rigorous life. It views ordinary enjoyment as trivial or even discreditable, and represents the pursuit of personal happiness as immoral. To enjoy oneself is to have struck with the enemy, the present. The prime objective of the ascetic ideal preached by the most movements is to breed contempt for the present, and campaign against the appetites and effort to pry loose tenacious tentacles holding on to the present. That this cheerless individual life runs its course against a colorful and dramatic background of collective pageantry serves to accentuate its worthlessness. The very impracticability of many of the goals which a mass movement sets itself as part of the campaign against the present. All that is practical, feasible, and possible is part of the present. To offer something practicable would be to increase the promise of the present and reconcile us with it. Faith in miracles, too, implies a rejection and a defiance of the present. when Tertullian, spelled Tertullian, proclaimed, "And he was buried and rose again. It is certain because it is impossible." He was snapping his fingers at the present. Finally, the mysticism of a movement is also a means of deprecating the present. It seems the present as the faded and distorted reflection of a vast unknown throbbing underneath and beyond us. The present is a shadow and an illusion. Number 49. There can be no genuine depreciation of the present without the assured hope for a better future. For however much we lament the baseness of our times, if the prospect offered by the future is that of advanced deterioration or even an unchanged continuation of the present, we are inevitably moved to reconcile ourselves with our existence, difficult and mean though it may be. All mass movements deprecate the present by depicting it as a mean preliminary to a glorious future, a mere doormat on the threshold of a millennium. To a religious movement, the present is a place of exile, a vale of tears leading to a heavenly kingdom. To a social revolution, it is a mean way station to the road to utopia. To a nationalist movement, it is an ignorable episode preceding the final triumph. It is true, of course, that the hopes released by a vivid visualization of a glorious future is the most potent source of daring and self-forgetting, more potent than the implied deprecation of the present. The mass movement has to center the hearts and minds of its followers on the future, even when it is not engaged in life-and-death struggle with established institutions and privileges. The self-sacrifice involved in mutual sharing and cooperative action is impossible without hope. When today is all there is, we grab what we can and hold on. We are afloat in an ocean of nothingness, and we hang on to any miserable piece of wreckage as if it were the tree of life. On the other hand, when everything is ahead and yet to come, we find it easy to share all we have and forego advantages within our grasp. The behavior of the members of the Donner Party when they were buoyed by hope and later when hope was gone illustrates the dependence of cooperativeness and of the communal spirit on hope. Those without hope are divided and driven to desperate self-seeking. Common suffering by itself, when not joined with hope, does not unite, nor does it evoke mutual generosity. The enslaved Hebrews in Egypt, their lives made bitter with hard bondage, were a bickering, backbiting lot. Moses had to give them hope of a promised land before he could join them together. The 30,000 hopeless people in the concentration camp of Buchenwald did not develop any form of united action, nor did they manifest any readiness for self-sacrifice. There was more greed and ruthless selfishness there than in the greediest and most corrupt of free societies. Instead of studying the way in which they could best help each other, they used all their ingenuity to dominate and oppress each other. Number 50. A glorification of the past can serve as a means to belittle the present, but unless joined with sanguine expectations of the future, an exaggerated view of the past results in an attitude of caution and not in reckless strivings of a mass movement. On the other hand, there is no more potent offering of the present than by viewing it as a mere link between a glorious past and a glorious future. Thus, through a mass movement at first turns its back on the past, it eventually develops a vivid awareness, often spacious, of a distant, glorious past. Religious movements go back to the day of creation. Social revolutions tell of a golden age when men were free, equal, and independent. Nationalist movements revive or invent memories of past greatness. This preoccupation with the past stems not only from a desire to demonstrate the legitimacy of the movement and the illegitimacy of the old order, but also to show up on the present as a mere interlude between past and future. Historical awareness also imparts a sense of continuity. Possessed of a vivid vision of past and future, the true believer sees himself part of something that stretches endlessly backward and forward, something eternal. He can let go of the present and of his own life, not only because it is a poor thing, hardly worth hanging on to, but also because it is not the beginning and the end of all things. Furthermore, a vivid awareness of past and future robs the present of its reality. It makes the present seem as a section in a procession or a parade. The followers of a mass movement see themselves on the march with drums beating and colors flying. They are participators in a soul-stirring drama played to a vast audience, generations gone and generations yet to come. They are made to feel that they are not their real selves, but actors playing a role, and their doings a performance, rather than as a real thing. Dying, too, they see as a gesture, an act of make-believe. Number 51. A depressing attitude toward the present fosters a capacity for prognostication. The well-adjusted make poor prophets. On the other hand, those who are at war at the present have an eye for the seeds of change and the potentiality of small beginnings. A pleasant existence blinds us to the possibilities of a drastic change. We cling to what we call our common sense, our practical point of view. Actually, these are but names for an all-absorbing familiarity with things as they are. The tangibility of a pleasant and secure existence is such that it makes other realities, however imminent, seem vague and visionary. Thus it happens that when the time become unhinged, it is practical people who are caught unaware, and are made to look like visionaries who cling to things that do not exist. On the other hand, those who reject the present and fix their eyes and hearts on things to come have a faculty for detecting the embryo or future danger or advantage in the ripeness of their times. Hence the frustrated individual and the true believer make better procrastinators than those who have reason to want the preservation of the status quo. It is often the fanatics and not always the delicate spirits that are found grasping the right thread of the solutions required by the future. 52. It is of interest to compare here the attitudes towards present, future, and past shown by conservative, liberal, and skeptic, the radical, and the reactionary. The conservative doubts that the present can be bettered, and he tries to shape the future in the image of the present. He goes to the past for reassurance about the present. I wanted the sense of continuity, the assurance that our contemporary blunders were an endemic in human nature, and that our new fads were very ancient heresies, that beloved things which were threatened had rocked not less heavily in the past. How indeed, like the skeptic, is the conservative? Is there anything whereof it may be said, see, this is new? It hath been already of old time, which was before us. To the skeptic the present is the sum of all that has been and shall be. The thing that hath been, it is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done, and there is no new things under the sun. The liberal sees the present as the legitimate offspring of the past, as a constantly growing and developing toward an improved future. To damage the present is to maim the future. All three then cherish the present, and as one would expect, they do not take willingly to the idea of self-sacrifice. Their attitude towards self-sacrifice is best expressed by the skeptic. For a living dog is better than a dead lion. For the living know that they shall die, but the dead know not anything. Neither have they any more a portion, for whatever in anything that is done under the sun. The radical and the reactionary loathe the present. They see it as an abomination and a deformity. Both are ready to proceed ruthlessly and recklessly with the present, and both are hospitable to the idea of self-sacrifice. Wherein do they differ? Primarily in their views of the malleability of man's nature. The radical has a passionate faith in the infinite perfectibility of human nature. He believes that by changing man's environment and by perfecting a technique of soul-forming, society can be wrought that is wholly new and unprecedented. The reactionary does not believe that man has unfathomed potentialities for good in him. If a stable and healthy society is to be established, it must be patterned after the proven models of the past. He sees the future as a glorious restoration rather than an unprecedented innovation. In reality, the boundary line between radical and reactionary is not always distinct. The reactionary manifests radicalism when he comes to recreate his ideal past. His image of the past is based less on what actually was than on what he wants the future to be. He innovates more than he reconstructs. A somewhat similar shift occurs in the case of the radical when he goes about building his new world. He feels the need for practical guidance, and since he has rejected and destroyed the present, he is compelled to link the new world with some point in the past. If he has to employ violence in shaping the new, his view of man's nature darkens and approaches closer to that of the reactionary. The blending of the reactionary and the radical is particularly evident in those engaged in a nationalist revival. The followers of Gandhi in India and the Zionists in Palestine would revive a glorified past and simultaneously create an unprecedented utopia. The prophets, too, were a blend of reactionary and the radical. They preached a return to the ancient faith and also envisioned a new world and a new life. 53. That the depressing attitude of a mass movement toward the present seconds the inclination of the frustrated is obvious. What surprises one when listening to the frustrated as they decry the present and all its works is the enormous joy they derive from doing so. Such delight cannot come from the mere venting of a grievance. There must be something more, and there is. By exacerbating upon the incurable baseness and vileness of the times, the frustrated soften their feelings of failure and isolation. It is as if they said, not only our blemished selves, but the lives of all contemporaries, even the most happy and successful, are worthless and wasted. Thus, by deprecating the present, they acquire a vague sense of equality. The means also a mass movement uses to make the present unpalatable, see section 48, strike a responsive chord in the frustrated. The self-mastery needed in overcoming their appetites gives them an illusion of strength. They feel that in mastering themselves they have mastered the world. The mass movement's advocacy of the impracticable and impossible also agrees with their taste. Those who fail everyday affairs show a tendency to reach out for the impossible. It is a device to camouflage their shortcomings. For when we fail in attempting the possible,